First of all, I certainly appreciate that introduction. If I had known she was going to read all of it, I wouldn't have written that much, but I thank you guys for doing it. So I'm here to talk to you guys about an issue which I hope is near and dear to your heart, and that's basically money. So the place I work for works to teach kids around the country all about personal finance. And as an organization, we came about in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008. And we thought to ourselves, well, how can we impact this, and what is the difference that we can make, right? And we now operate around the country kind of doing this. But to kind of frame the conversation, I'm going to take a step back and really talk about this crisis and what it actually means, right? So I asked the people on my staff to make me a slide on the crisis, and here's what they kind of came up with. And we worked on it. It's pretty simple. I took off a lot of the stuff, right? But the point I'm making here is that oftentimes when we talk about this crisis, we talk about it in very abstract terms. Like we talk about the millions of people who lost their homes, like we talk about the people who lost their jobs, and we talk about the loss in economic output of billions of dollars. But the reality is that this crisis is not an abstract concept of numbers, it's a concept of people. And I am a bit remiss because I didn't talk about, when I first started, about how I'm from Chicago and I grew up on the South Side. And by the way, I went to the Kenwood Academy. So I also like to win, guys, and so I'm counting on you and to make this happen, right? But these people who are affected in the crisis, these are people. It's your moms, your fathers, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins. It's my mom, who just retired a year ago. And I hate to turn this into a competition, but it seems like that's what we have here. But I have a great mom, and I would put her against anybody's mom in this room because she worked hard every day. She sacrificed for me and my sister and did everything that she was supposed to do. And she recently retired, and I found out two things that really kind of shocked me. The first one is that she hadn't had a sick day in 17 years when she retired, right? So most of you guys are in high school, which means for your entire life, she is not taking a day off. And I can guarantee you that's not because she was never sick or she was never tired or just needed that day, because she was doing what she needed to do, right? And the second thing I learned is that she lost half of her retirement in 2008. And so what that means is that today, when she's trying to look at the future, she's legitimately concerned about whether or not she's going to have to go bag groceries when she's 75 years old to be able to pay the rent. And that's a real story that I would imagine that most of the people in this room can kind of talk to in some form or fashion. There's somebody that that's been affected. There's somebody in here who's lost their house or whose parents has lost a job. And that's really the impact of the crisis and kind of what we're talking about. And oftentimes when people do talk about it, they talk about it in these high terms, and there's always the other side of this. And they always say, well, here's what happened in Wall Street, and here's what's going on. It's these big things, these big people who are so far beyond what's happening, and it's so easy to get pessimistic about what is happening, right? I read the one in the middle, and it talks about a guy who apologized for his role in the crisis and what his organization did to really kind of cause it. And I don't know that guy, right? I'm sure he's a fantastic person. I'm sure he's worked hard all his life. But at the end of the day, I'm also not that worried about whether or not he's sorry. I'm worried about my mom, and I'm worried about the other people around me, right? But that's not the frame that I want to have today, is to talk about these people in Wall Street who are so far beyond, and to talk about us in our communities being helpless. I want to talk about the things around us that have an impact and a real tangible difference in what we can do on a day-to-day basis. And so the frame I would like to use to kind of have this conversation is around something which I imagine everybody has kind of seen, and that's basically a currency exchange. So who here has ever been to a currency exchange in Chicago? Pretty much everyone here, right? And by and large, it's seen as a positive thing, right? So right here is a map of every single currency exchange in the city of Chicago. I didn't crunch the numbers because I think the map speaks for itself, but we basically have one of these in all of our communities, if not every block, right? And what's the basic service that this organization provides? It cashes checks. So for those of you who haven't been there, when you get paid, you take your check in, like you give them the check, the place gives you back cash. And why are you happy? Because you just got money, right? You can go out, you can go to the movies, you can hang out with your friends, you can head to the beach. If you have enough, you can come here and watch a Bears game. That's kind of pricey, I wouldn't recommend it until later, but you're always appreciative of that fact, right? But I want you to take a step back from this and think about this like a little bit more critically, because when you go in there and you cash your check, they charge you anywhere from $10 to $25, right? And if you're like me and you grew up on the South Side, you're not necessarily trying to walk around with a lot of money, so what do? You put it on a prepaid card. And how does that work? You pay them for the card, you pay them to cash the check, you pay them to put the money on the card that you have, right? But and I apologize, I know it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, but let's do a bit of math on that, right? So if we sit here and say one person, imagine you guys in a year and a half, when you graduate from high school and you go to college or you work a job and you have some form of money coming in. Let's say every other week you go into a currency exchange and you cash this check. And let's be generous and say that only costs you $10 to do it. That's 26 checks a year. That's $260 a year for you. It's not a lot of money, but it's significant. That buys you a pair of shoes, it gets you through the weekend. In some cases, that could be the groceries for the month, right? But now, I want you to pull out even further and think about this room. So we have 200 kids in this room right now. Imagine what happens if all of you are doing the same thing, right? So if 200 of you are spending $260 a year, how much is that? And I'll make it easy because the number's on the screen. All right, it's $52,000. Now that's not insignificant. That's enough to raise a family in the city of Chicago. That's 2 years of college for a person to go to a relatively decent school. That's a nice car, if nothing else, right? Solely because you guys are cashing your checks. By and by, how much do I spend to cash my checks? Nothing. Every day or every other week, I wake up on the 1st and 15th, and my money is in my account, magically, apparently, and it doesn't cost me a dime to do so. So what is the value? What are you getting for this $52,000 that is being spent in this room every year? And the answer is nothing. It's 2016, and we're still cashing checks at a currency exchange. Now, the reason why I bring this up, because this is certainly a tangible example, and it's easy to discount it, right? There's obviously reasons why people cash checks, and the way I would frame it from my view as an organization that works to educate people is that people don't think about it in the right way, and people don't understand, right? But there's also other reasons, I don't have a checking account. To open one, I have to go all the way downtown with my mom on a Saturday. She can't do that. To, really it's $10. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's not really a big problem, right? But here's the thing about this. It is. So who wants to guess how much is spent yearly in the US on cashing checks? I'm sorry? 2 billion? Anyone else? How much? 12? Anyone else? I'm sorry? 100 million? All right. So I'm going to tell you the answer. 700 million. $52 billion a year on check cashing. That is spent on zero economic value to you. So just think about that when you're saying, I'm going to go to the currency exchange and what that means. I'm older, and I have friends who still, to this day, don't have a checking account, right? And this is $51 billion that can go to all sorts of things, if nothing else, to stay in your pocket. You're from Chicago, and you always hear about, what's going on with the schools and the budgets and, the economic crisis and things like that. Well, what could we do with $51 billion that is coming from nothing, right? So that leads me to my challenge. And here are the words. I understand that we kind of have the best of the best here, and so I'm not going to read this to you. I presume that you can. But want you to kind of understand like where I'm coming from when I issue this challenge. And it's that at the end of the day, you know, there are rules and there are things that regulate this financial world. And if you don't understand those rules, you can't play the game. So the difference between like our communities and the people on Wall Street is that they understand the rules and they're playing the game and they're playing it well, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and sell you a dream about how that's not significant and how it's not important that, you know, they're doing things that impacts us and they're treating it like a game, because that's not true, because that certainly is true. But also what I'm saying is that there are plenty of ways in which if we just simply understand, we can do better, right? And to like put this in context, when I talk about finance, I'm talking about everything, right? So this is the first step, getting your money. Like, and this is how much is being pulled from you when you take that first step. Imagine how much is out there with everything else that you want to do, from buying a car, getting a mortgage, paying for college, and everything in between. And just think about it, if this is 51 billion, how much is that, right? So regardless of whether or not you want to pick my challenge, which I hope you will, right? What I want everyone here to do is find some facet of finance that they don't understand, or that's had an impact on their lives or their family's lives, and understand it, and know how to play that, and know what the rules are, and then ultimately, if nothing else, make sure that person next to you understands that as well. Because that's what I do with my day. And I would love to be able to sit down with all of you and talk to you about everything that I've learned on my path and all the tools, but I can't do it because I only have so many hours in a day. So really it's gonna be on you guys to figure out what's missing and what you can do. So that's all I have. I believe at this point we have about 15 minutes for questions, and we'll leave it there.
All right, so now is the active participation time. Let's give Daniel another round of applause. I mean, that was some really great information. Can you guys believe that $52 billion? Hello? Do you guys realize that? $52 billion? Can you imagine what we could do in Chicago with $52 billion? I'd be like, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. All right, so who has some questions for Daniel? Let's not all jump up at once. And then right here.
All right. So have you ever thought like that's how they get paid? So in reality, we can't really do anything about that. I mean, we can, but if they're using, okay, so I'm gonna just give you a scenario.
Sure, no, absolutely.
So you go in, you know, get check-in, whatever, and then they tell you you have to pay this much. But everywhere you go, there's like a tax fee. So the money is probably going to the people that works there. So they're gonna need that money. And it's like, you showed us like a map, and it's like a lot of, you know, checking cash places.
Sure.
So that means it's a lot of people that works there. So like, what do you think of that?
So it's a good question, right? So it's a question of what happens to the people that works in this industry and the people that works inside that thing, and whether or not there's actually a cost associated with that. That's a great question, but it's also a sense of, you know, predominantly these services only exist in places which are low income. And there's a reason why if you go out to the suburbs or to a nice neighborhood, you won't see a currency exchange, right? And so there's certainly value in understanding the impact and the economic impact very specifically on those jobs, but you also have to understand like the rents associated with coming out of that. So what's the balance there, right? So like how many jobs are being created with that 51 billion? How much of that money is going outside of that community, right? And if you think about that, right, that's significant. And so certainly that one person does not have a job, but imagine how many jobs you could create if you took that $51 billion and invested that back into the community, right? So like how many schools can you found? Like how many stores can you create with that money, and how many jobs is that going to put back into your community is a question I would have for you in that.
Okay, one last question, sorry, Paul. So say if we just wipe out all of those stores, do you think that that will affect the economy more, like the community more, or?
In a positive way?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So that's like the point I'm making, in that by doing this, we're spending money, and it's not being allocated to kind of what we want it to be, right? So like, why should you pay for simply getting access to the money that you've already earned, right? As compared to being able to spend it on the things that you need, in terms of being able to pay your rent and your food and like your college education, which by and by are gonna have a very significant impact on your community, because the money that you can spend inside of your community goes back to it. So if I give you that $260, right, you can then spend that on something of value that's not simply giving you access to your money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One side note, you guys don't have to copy this down. We're going to give you a sheet that has all the challenges. So don't worry about trying to write every single thing down. Just make sure you write your notes, and the actual challenge will be given to you afterwards. Okay, who's next?
Hi, yeah. I just want to know a little bit about the challenge. I want to ask you a question. So basically,
what's your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, my name is Jake Doyle. All right, with Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences. And what I really want to know is simplifying this challenge. So you just want us to create a system that will allow other people to learn how to capitalize what they make?
Absolutely.
All right, just making sure.
Yep.
Good question.
Hello. I was just wondering, the $52 billion just comes from currency exchanges, not from like the ATM fee that you get, like that? That's not even factoring that in? Okay.
It is strictly the check cashing industry. So, you know, at various places you might have additional services, like, you know, it's a one that's down the street which helps you with your taxes. I can't speak to whether or not that's good, like in a sense, but that predominant industry, that's how much it's worth on a per year basis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a question all the way in the back, and then I'm going to go over here, but we're going to go back there first. Let's give our mic runners a round of applause.
What are some other services?
We don't know who you are.
Hey, what's your name?
I said my name earlier.
I
I
forgot.
wasn't here for that, though. I wasn't here for that.
My name is Dante Gibbons. But what are some other services you refer to people instead of using currency exchanges?
Yeah, so it's a great question of like, how do you solve that, right? And the reason why I bring this up as a problem, because it's very simple. Just get a checking account, right? So over a third of the US population will use these services predominantly, and it's a simple fix. It's simply around, if you have a checking account, and in most cases you can get that, and you can have it direct deposited, they won't charge you to cash your check.
Hi,
Hey, stand up, man.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's all good. Hey, what's your name again?
My name is Amirio Moore. I'm with Wells Community Academy. My question is that you say that you want us to put our money straight to the bank instead of going to cash it ourselves.
Sure.
But that does come with some type of backflaws. Like, what if we end up, when we grow up and we continue to do this, they will start charging us because we are adults. And then we have to be paying for that too. So how do we like move around that if we have to end up still paying for things? And sometimes when we get our check, they might tell us like, okay, we get our check on Friday, but we end up getting it on Monday. And sometimes that can backfire on us because we have to pay bills.
Sure.
And then that can become in late fees and other things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, so it's a great point, right? And one of the things that I talked about was that there's obviously reasons why people value these services, right? But also what's important is that you kind of understand like how that works and what your kind of options are, right? Because I don't pay any fees for my checking account, right? And like I actually have the ability on my checking account to, if I have a bill come in and I can't cover it, the bank will help me out and be able to do it, right? But that requires a level of knowledge that you only get by actually understanding what's out there and what the system works. And what these currency exchanges are, like, and again, all of this is an example, is a convenience location-based service. You feel like you need your money right now, you're gonna go to the closest space to you, which allows you to get that without even really considering the fact that if you walk an extra 2 blocks to a bank branch, you won't have to pay that. So there's certainly a lot of considerations, and I don't wanna discount those, but what I'm saying is that you have to understand those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Paul Gilbert, and I was interested. The $51 to $52 billion that is spent cashing checks at at check cashing places and on prepaid cards, if that leads to community, where does that, or to who does that money go to then?
It goes to you. It's like, that money does not leave your community. That's money that's in your pocket, right? That's money that you're paying on a week-to-week basis, that you're giving to somebody else to simply give you access to your money.
No, I'm saying the money that's spent at the check cashing places.
Okay.
Where does that money go?
Oh, it goes to the person that owns that. It's a business. I mean, that's how it works. So if I own a currency exchange, right, and I'm a business and I'm a corporation and I'm charging you to cash a check, that money goes to them, right? So I can't tell you who owns, like on that map of currency exchanges, who owns all of them, but I can almost guarantee you it's not always going to be the people in your community.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Zainab Akani, and I'm from Rickover Naval Academy. And my question is, when you're trying to get rid of the currency exchange business, wouldn't that kind of hurt the economy and the community a little, since some people would be losing jobs, or no?
Sure. Well, so, like, I believe the woman over here asked a comparable question, right? And certainly there's always going to be trade-offs in finance, and that's like a central tenet of kind of what you talk about. But it's also a question of like, how else could that money be used? And what's the relative value of simply giving you access to your money versus what you could do with $51 billion, right? If I ask you directly, is there something in your community that you would want more of? What is that?
I don't know, like better jobs, a better park community, I guess.
Sure. So a better job, a better community, like athletic clubs, you know, stores, restaurants, like all the things that you want. And all that money that you spend simply getting access to your money is money that you can't spend on those things which are there. And like as a community, then that adds up, right? Would you rather have a currency exchange on a corner or a grocery store or another school?
Okay, I get what you mean. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Over here in the corner, we got some folks over there.
Hi, my name is Yalam. I'm from Amundsen. So if checking bank accounts are like a simple solution to this issue, what about those that are undocumented or don't have a social security number? How can they be assured that they can have a chance to do that as well?
Yeah, so it's certainly a good question to kind of ask yourself, well, who are the people that are relying upon this? And that's certainly a population of people that have challenges, but there's also ways around that as well, you know? And so there are institutions that work with these populations that kind of do it, or it could be if that's a gap, right? If you look into it and realize that in your community that there is no good solution to this problem, well, then I would challenge you to figure out, well, how do you fix that, right? Because if these people are paying upwards of 10% of their money just to get access to it solely because they're undocumented, then that's obviously a problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, right
Are you
here.
picking or am I picking?
Oh, I mean, you could totally do it.
Oh, it's fine. It's your turn. Who has a question? Over there.
Right here in the front, I mean the middle.
And I think after that we'll probably head over here because I don't think we've heard from anybody over here.
We really haven't. So,
Oops, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Marina Nile from Rickover. I was wondering, back to where you were saying about the banks and loans. What if they deny your loan and your bill is due that day?
Yeah, so I don't want to oversimplify the concept of finance, right? And the reason why I bring up the question of check cashing, because it is a really simple thing. To the questions of loans, right? Well, that's a much more complicated question around credit, access to credit, and kind of what goes on, right? And it's important to understand that, because if not, you're also, these institutions pretty much have the ability to dictate to you what's available and what's not, right? So, you know, as an example, what do most people do in that situation that you're talking about? They go to a payday lender because they don't have access to credit, they have no credit, they have bad credit, and those institutions charge you upwards of 1,000% simply for a loan, right? And let me tell you, you know, obviously you guys maybe have had an economics class, you probably haven't really got into finance. 1,000% is a lot of money to pay, right? And I'm not saying that you won't have considerations on a day-to-day basis that's going to affect you, but what I also want people to kind of appreciate and understand is the fact that these add up, right? So it's not just the one check for $10, right? It's the 26 checks for $260. It's the 200 people doing that again and again for $52,000, adding up to $51 billion. So don't let me oversell you in regards to the fact that you need to manage what's in front of you, but you also have to have a presence of mind of how that adds up and what happens over time.
All right, we have time for one more question. Over here. There you go.
Hello, my name is Adonijah Scarlett from Roberto Clemente. I was wondering what the age group is that uses cash checking the most.
The most?
Yes.
It is working professionals who are adults. So certainly it's youth, but it's also people who have jobs. It's people who rely primarily on this service. And so unfortunately, it's all age groups. And like that's really a part of the problem. Like as I said, I'm in my 30s and I have friends who have never had a checking account. And so you think about that, they've been cashing all their checks for the last 16 or 17 years of their work history. Like, you know, like if you do that math, that's close to $10,000. And I guarantee you, if I went back to them and said, do you want 10 grand? They would probably say, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's give Daniel another round of applause.
Hey,
Thank
thanks,
you.
guys.